That's nuts. I guess I'll get us started here today. I have known Chris for, I don't know, 10, 15 years now, I forget. We met through the Rodeo Speakers Committee. We were both volunteers on this committee. We went out and did all sorts of speeches and charity events and everything else. And so we were sitting, I think, at a table together and really liked the guy from the start. And so just thought he was smart. I know he's very proud of his military service. And there are good people in the world, and he is near the top of the list. He's just a really good overall guy, smart, built to practice. And so I refer my personal friends to him. So the Van Lanninghams and other people like that. So, and also he brought Jordan, who I don't know as well, but seems to be his right-hand person, and they work really well together. So Chris gave a speech at Hirsch and Westheimer when I was at that firm, and loved it. I mean, what he thinks about is what do you expect when you want to bring business to a firm, or what do you expect to bring business for his type of business? He helps people from tax planning to investment planning to all sorts of stuff. And so he just gives common sense tips. And so we're very lucky to have him give a speech today on how we can all get better at doing business management. Business development. So Chris, thank you very much for coming. Awesome.
All right. I'd like to introduce our speaker, Christopher Mansky. He is a former United States Army captain and the founder of Mansky Wealth Management, which is in the Houston Business Journal as one of the largest investment firms in Houston. He's been published or quoted in the Wall Street Journal, Reader's Digest, U.S. News and World Report, Forbes, Financial Advisor magazine, and more. He's a frequent guest on national podcasts and TV shows. Chris can also be seen on Yahoo Finance, Think Advisor, MSN.com, CEO World, and numerous others. Outside of work, Chris has been married to an Aggie named Jessica for over 20 years, and they have 4 daughters, 3 of whom were born in the same day. He's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, run with the bulls in Pamplona, and is a traditionally published author. His first book, The Prepared Investor, is an Amazon bestseller and has been compared to Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. His second book is called The Magicians of Money and is expected out next year from McGraw-Hill. He often presents in the community and does book signings, so that's a great resource to consider. If you need a speaker for any other organization you're involved in. Other than that, he's taught me everything I know. Chris, the floor is yours.
So there's some formality here, right? We are being recorded. So thanks for your patience with us as we're being so formal. I also want to mention that Jordan is used to being introduced and not doing the introduction. So I'm really grateful that you were there to do that for me. And Pat, thank you for having us join you all today. I think the next maybe 20, 30 minutes, I'll do my best to live up to the promises that you made about, being smart and giving, straightforward advice. If I was in your all's shoes, I would have wanted to hear something different from the introduction. And it's because of a book I recently read called Principles by Ray Dalio. Has anyone also read that book? If not, you might put it on your list. It's a real good one. A takeaway that I got from that book was that you should be very careful about taking advice from anybody that has not successfully done the thing that they're giving advice about. And I have been asked to talk with you all about growth. And so I'd like to add just a little bit more info to the standard introduction to highlight my past as it relates to growth. So first of all, I'm talking about growth as a service professional. This would be investment advisors, which is what we do. I lead a service, professional service organization. But any intangible, CPAs provide tax advice, lawyers provide legal advice, insurance agents. This is all that same world, and we have the same hurdles when it comes to growth. And here's how I've dealt with those hurdles. For one thing, I started out at Merrill Lynch, and I was recognized as one of the fast growers across the nation. I wasn't in the top 1%. I was in the top fraction of 1%. And I was tagged to train other Merrill Lynch advisors. And I traveled the country helping these people to grow their practices. And I talked with thousands of them. I started my own firm almost exactly 10 years ago today. And in those last 10 years, that enterprise has gone from being myself and an assistant to what you had heard Jordan mention, listed as one of the largest here in Houston. We're also listed nationally, about halfway down on the annual list of the biggest firms in the country. We are directly responsible for over $1 billion in client net worth, and we supervise almost 500 million. So I'm sharing all this not to say, look at me and I'm bragging. I'm sharing this with you to say that the methodologies and the philosophies that I'm about to share with you, they work. And if you decide to implement them as an attorney or as anybody who has an intangible service offering, it would work for you. So with that, again, my name is Chris Mansky, and I'm going to share with you 3 short stories. There's no PowerPoint, there's no handout. It's just me talking with you all. And I'll ask that you do save your questions to the end, but don't let them disappear. Make a note, get that question down, because I would love to hear the questions after I'm done with my 3 short stories. The first one is called The Location Decision. And in that story, I will describe the main reason that service-oriented professionals like investment advisors and attorneys, why they fail to grow. In the second story, I will talk to you a little bit about balance and happiness and how it can help and hurt your efforts for growth. And then the third story that I'll share is called The Baker's Dozen, which is a story about how to grow. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the location decision. There was a gentleman that I used to work with. He owned 15 Subway sandwich shops, and he would lament all the time that he did not have any authority, no autonomy. And he would say things like, I don't get to pick the products that I sell. And we know that. It's always the same sandwiches in a Subway shop. He can't choose how to decorate the shop. It's that same wallpaper everywhere you go, the same yellow plastic furniture. But it's more than that. He didn't get to choose how much to pay his people. There's a range that Subway provides depending on the region of the country. He didn't even get to pick how much to charge for his sandwiches. The prices he charged his customers, that was dictated to him. And so when you hear all this, how can you say that he's a business owner? Well, because there is one thing that he gets to pick, and it is the most important thing. In fact, Subway puts a lot of time and money into making sure that that owner makes the decision well, because it's critical to the franchise's success. And that's the location decision. Where do you put your Subway sandwich shop? If you locate it at the corner of nobody cares and who is even interested, well, then you're probably not going to sell many sandwiches. But if you locate it well, people easily can see the sign. They can easily get into the store and give the store its business, and you can expect good things to come from it, according to Subway at least. There's a lot of homework that goes into that location decision. I cannot overstate that. It's months, sometimes years in the making. And once it's made, it's done. You don't have to think about it again. You don't have to do anything else. You just have to come in, make sure your sign is lit up, your people are ready to make the sandwiches, and go ahead and open the doors. If you're wondering, how does this relate to being an attorney? Well, just give me a moment, because I'll make that connection for you. Let's take an example like an attorney in her first 5 years at a mid-sized firm. We'll call her Mary. Mary does not get to pick what products to sell. She gets to pick the area of law that she's in, just like he got to pick Subway as the franchise that he would pick. But the products are pretty much set. She didn't get to decide how to decorate the foyer or what furniture would be in the office. She doesn't get to pick how much to charge. She doesn't get to pick how to collect that money. You can see the similarities are there. What I am proposing to you all is that investment advisors, CPAs, attorneys, insurance agents, We all have the same critical decision that a franchise owner of Subway has. We have that same authority, and that's the location decision, which probably sounds weird because when you think about your location, probably you didn't pick this high rise and this floor is where you'd be located. And so give me a moment and I'll explain that to you. What I think is important to remember is that Subway puts so much attention in this location decision because it determines who is going to easily be aware of the chance to buy a sandwich. How many people drive by? Can they see the sign? Are they aware that they can get in there and buy that sandwich? It's a retail shop. It's a physical, real world location. As long as the sign is lit up, the location decision is not something that the Subway franchise owner has to think about. The physical location for investment advisors, for attorneys, is much different because we could meet them at their home. We could meet them at a coffee shop. We could meet them at a Subway sandwich shop. We could meet them at the office here. That physical location isn't what drives the picture. It's our activity and time, our location decision that determines whether people are aware that we have some really good sandwiches to sell. It's our activity out in the community. How are we letting people know that we exist and that we have something for them to buy? We're different with our intangible service. It's not a physical location. Our intangible service in that we don't have a sign that's lit up. And let's look at this analogy a little bit more, because if a business owner at Subway goes up every morning and puts a tarp over their sign and boards up their windows, we would all look at that person standing in there ready to make sandwiches like they're an idiot. It's terrible business. It's immediately obvious that it doesn't make any sense for that person to hide their sign and board up their windows. But that's exactly what investment advisors, CPAs, and attorneys do every day with their location decision. They come into the office and they hide in front of the computer doing tasks that have nothing to do with growth. They spend their time and their activity doing things that do not directly connect to the sign being lit up and people being aware that they've got some good sandwiches to sell. When you consider our location decision, your location decision, it's a daily discipline. It's a daily effort to spend some amount of time doing something that lets the world know that you're open for business, that you have something to offer, and that you should be getting referrals or getting people to talk to you about it. No one knows that professionals like us exist unless we do something to get the word out. We have to get out there and interact with the world on a regular basis in order for people to know that we've got these delicious sandwiches to sell. We don't have the luxury of setting aside our location decision like a retail shop does. We just don't. If you put your shop at the corner of nobody and nowhere for the next 2 days, and no one is aware of you, it doesn't have to be that way. You could choose to do something different. If you choose to do that, though, welcome to average. Like, this is what the vast majority of service providers do, not just attorneys, CPAs, investment advisors. This intangible service offering, the vast majority of folks, they are not plugged into growth activity on a daily basis. If you are thinking right now, I'd like for the next month to be a little different than the last month. If you're thinking that there's a connection to what I just described with this idea of growth, then you're going to love my third story, the baker's dozen. But first, let me tell the quick second story about balance. I'd like to begin by defining balance. Balance is simply, you've got a list of priorities and everyone has a different list. Each one of you is going to have different priorities, but you've got a certain list of priorities and you give those priorities a certain amount of your time. You decide both. That's balance, but it's not a complete definition because we're missing the most important aspect, which is time. I'll pose a question to you. Can you live a balanced life minute to minute? So in the next 60 seconds, that means you would sleep for 7 seconds. You'd spend 7 seconds with your friends. Obviously, this is ridiculous. This is just as silly as a business owner putting a tarp over their sign. You would never see it happen. There's no point to even discussing it. Okay, let's lengthen that to an hour. Can you spend 10 minutes of sleep, 5 minutes at temple, 4 minutes with your friends, and then the next hour you repeat? No, it doesn't work. Again, it's not reasonable. You cannot achieve balance on an hourly basis. But once we stretch the timeline to a full day, a 24-hour period, a lot of people buy in. If you extend it a bit further to a week, it's not a lot of people, it's a vast majority of people. They buy in and they say, this is the timeline for me. Right now, there is somebody in this room, if not multiple people, who they think of balance on a weekly basis. And I am not saying that you're wrong. I am saying that it is very difficult to be growth focused, to be a rainmaker, if you're thinking of balance on a short timeline. If you're trying to keep all the balls in the air on a short timeline, it's extremely hard to succeed with your growth goals. So to talk a little bit more about that, there's some flaws in this short timeline, and it's really an American issue. It's the West that has this idea of balance. It's not like this is a ubiquitous universal idea. And one of the main flaws from short timeline for balance is that you lose the joy of sinking your teeth into something and deeply focusing on something that is important to you. You lose the satisfaction of giving your attention to the thing that matters most, or in this really busy age, the 2 or 3 things that matter most. If growth is one of those things and you're not giving it the time, or you're juggling all these other balls that are lower in priority, you're going to find it that's hard to get ahead. A lot of deep thinkers on the subject of balance and happiness, they specifically suggest that a short timeline, the shorter the timeline, the less capable that you can achieve that feeling of fulfillment. And that the longer the timeline, the more fulfilling, more easy it is to find that fulfilling, happy feeling. They suggest balance over a decade, or even over multiple lifetimes. Whether you study Aristotle, Marcus Aurelius, the Dalai Lama, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the list goes on. They all agree the obstacle is the way. The obstacle is the way. The more difficult the climb up the mountain, the sweeter the joy at the top. Olympic athletes do not live balanced lives in the form of balance that we typically think of, that weekly or daily balance. They're not. Fortune 500 CEOs, they're not living balanced lives. Military generals, it's not happening. Right now, I bet everyone in this room can think of a couple people that you know and respect, and you admire their success, and probably their idea of balance is not in sync with the, all of the priorities all at once. And what are those priorities? Well, one of my favorite ways to divide up priorities is called the 7 F's. Actually, it was Jordan that told me about the 7 F's years ago. But there's 100 ways to figure out what your priorities are. But the 7 F's are family, faith, fun, fitness, friends, field, like occupation, and future. There might be another F for somebody else. There might even be one of those that doesn't make sense to you. But these are the typical balls that people are trying to keep in the air, all of them, all at once. I'd like to describe a client that I used to work with. He's now deceased. He lived a pretty fantastic life. I admired him greatly, and we got to have a couple intimate discussions. And in one of them, I insulted him. I'd like to tell you that story right now. So this guy, he's an immigrant to the United States. He would wake up every day, and I say every day, 6 days a week for sure, sometimes 7 days a week, and he'd go to work. And he'd have dinner with his family most evenings, but usually after dinner, he'd go back to work. And when our relationship got to a point where I could really chat with him beyond just the numbers of being a financial advisor, I gently accused him of being a workaholic. And I was wrong. We talked at length, and he made it very clear to me what his priorities were and how he thought about them. And he thought about them over multiple lifetimes. We probably all have heard this story of somebody who, I'm going to do something in my life so that my children have something different and my grandchildren have something radically different. That was his view. He was respected by his family. He was valued by his community. He had purpose in his life. And when I insulted him, his kind response was, your idea of balance is the path to mediocrity. It is the path to sacrificing whatever it is that you hold most dear, because you aren't giving the thing you hold most dear the attention it deserves. It was a great conversation. The easier it gets, the less happier we are. The more you focus on all of the balls being in the air on a short time frame, the less possible it is that you can dig in to one or two areas of your life and really challenge yourself. So years ago, I was having a beer in a VA hall. Pat had mentioned that I was in the Army. I was in the Army for about 10 years, and I was the youngest guy there for sure. And I was listening to these old codgers talk, and it was immediately obvious. None of them were talking about the 7 Fs. None of them were talking about balance and how they had the easy path to where they were. They were all reminiscing and sharing about surviving difficulty, overcoming obstacles. They were proud of the things that they believed were difficult. And I think that everyone in this room could probably right now think of something in your past that it has defined you. You've allowed it to be part of what makes you tick. When you tell someone, this is who I am and what I'm about, it was this time period of your life where you probably were not balanced because you were focused on something, you overcame a difficulty. It's a piece of the puzzle now. I suggest that if you focus on growth, you don't just enjoy the financial success that comes with it. There definitely would be financial success. You also find meaningful purpose in providing a service that your fellow human being appreciates. This is the joy of being a service professional. We're not selling sandwiches or widgets. You offer somebody something valuable. It's meaningful to them. And the more that you provide that to others, the more that it feels to the human that you're living a good life. This is purported to be the secret to long life and happiness, is being useful to your community. The next 5 years, I believe, is the time for a focus like that. Right now, to the next 60 months, this is the time. And for those of you who might now be thinking like, there's a little bit of a connection to this idea of growth. Like, I would like next month to be different than last month. I'd like next year to be different than this year. If you're sensing that at all inside of you, then you're going to love my last story. I mentioned before, it's called The Baker's Dozen. Once upon a time, it's silly, it's like a fairy tale, The Baker's Dozen. Once upon a time, there was a baker, and she made delicious cupcakes. She's the hero of our story because nobody else has cupcakes that are as good as hers. But nobody is aware of her cupcakes because she makes them in her kitchen. So she has to make her location decision on a daily basis, and she goes down to the corner in her spare time, and she holds up a sign that says, I have really good cupcakes. And one day she looks back over the last couple months to see, is my sign working? What have my sales been? Where have they been coming from? What's it been like? And she decides, wow, look at this. I got a lot of business from a wedding planner. This wedding planner needed cupcakes for weddings, for rehearsal dinners. And she also saw she got a lot of business from a food truck owner. This food truck owner, every Monday, clockwork, big order of cupcakes to pair with the tacos. And so she found this information interesting. And she thought a little bit about it. She went to sleep. She woke up the next morning. She grabbed her sign, the same sign, just like always, went down to the corner, the same corner, just like always. And she did the same thing that she always has done. And that's where the story ends, because that is exactly what the vast majority of service professionals do in a non-threatening catalyst situation. You right now are in a non-threatening catalyst situation. I am suggesting grow. There's no threat behind it. You're not going to lose your job. You could do the exact same thing tomorrow. And what most people do is they think, wow, that was a decent talk. And then they go back to doing the exact same thing that they've always done. If one of you is going to do something different, and I don't say one lightly, it's supposedly a 2% rule. Studies have shown that a non-threatening catalyst situation, 2 out of 100, 1 out of 50. So maybe 0 out of 16. But if there's one of you that is interested in doing something different, embracing difficulty, here is what you could do. It's a rainmaker's tactic. It's called the baker's dozen. It's called the baker's dozen because it has 13 slots that you have to fill in. It's an easy 3-step process. So the first step is going to take 20 to 60 minutes. If you have less than 5 years of experience, it's going to take you 60 minutes. If you have more than 5 years experience, 20 to 30 minutes. You write down on a piece of paper 13 jobs, not people. Don't think about people. 13 jobs that easily give you business. So as an example, I would think investment advisor should be should be at the top of the list. We easily give business to attorneys. There's an investment advisor right here. Jordan would love to trade cards with you. She directly supervises over $100 million. She's been published in all the same articles and places that I have been. You should trade cards with her. Put her on your list. But notice I leapt just now from advisor to human. Don't do that. You start off with just the job. What job easily gives you business? Probably a real estate agent for some of you. Maybe an insurance agent, maybe a banker. If you did legal services for business owners, and that was your focus, well, then you probably need a commercial real estate agent. You'd need an investment banker who buys and sells businesses, an HR consultant. You will be able to come up with the list. There is 13 careers that easily refer you business. And if you cannot come up with the list, you set the time aside and you can't come up with the list. This has happened. I sat down with a lawyer in the divorce family law space, and he said, there's no way for me to predict when someone's going to get a divorce. There's no way for me to connect to that community. They sometimes don't even know until the last minute themselves. This isn't going to work. And I said to him, why are you not trying? You need to reflect on why are you not trying? Because I'm not even in your field. And I instantly can think of one investment advisor. They talk to us about what's going on and they ask us for a referral. CPAs also get asked. The CPA is someone that has their trust. Like, look, do you know an attorney? You're not trying. And you should ask yourself why and be clear with the person in the mirror about what's really going on. Because the answer is not that there isn't 13 fields that can refer to you. You could get creative with it. So there's an attorney that I know in Seattle, and I loved what this guy did with the baker's dozen. So he decided, and I don't know if it's real, but it sure has worked for him. He decided that before a divorce happens, there's an affair. And during the affair, somebody gets a major change to their hairstyle. And so he talked to high-end hairstylists And he set up a monthly wine tasting. He paid like $300 to $500 a month for years. And he came to have two hairstylists that really liked him, and they had a good professional connection. And he told them, look, whenever someone spends a lot of money and makes a major change, invite them and their friends to come to the wine tasting. And so the hairstylists, they would get to meet the friends of their best clients. And that attorney is hobnobbing with people who might be dealing with a major change in the near future. And he did not get a single bit of business for about a year. And then he got a couple pieces in the next 6 months. And at 18 months, the floodgates opened up. And he's got business coming in crazy town. I love stories like that. And it started with the baker's dozen because he was thinking about who will give me business. I never would have thought of professional hairstylists. He also tried doing that with trainers, physical trainers. And because the hairstylist thing blew up, he just kind of let that go aside. The point is that you can be creative. There are definitely 13 careers. Once you have your 13 spots filled in with careers, step one is done. Probably took you 60 minutes at the most. Step two is a little bit longer. Now you need to come up with 2 to 3 people per slot that you respect, you think well of, they respect you, and that you can trade business with, that they would refer to you. And here's where people who have experience, they get log jammed. People who have experience, that if they're doing this exercise, they can fill in names. Oh, I know this person who is an investment advisor. I know this person who's a CPA, and they fill in the names. But here's the problem. If you were doing that exercise, that means that you're looking for more growth than you have right now. Those people, they're not the right people, or you're not interacting with them enough. But probably it's the former. The right people would be giving you referrals. You mentioned, you might have remembered in the introduction, Pat had mentioned that he has referred business to me. This is someone that is on my list of my 13. That's what you want, is that it actually is happening. If it's not happening, you can't put their name down. I had a question one time. I was talking to the Houston CPA Society, and one of them said, well, I have this one contact that I keep giving them business, but I'm not getting anything in return. So yeah, that's not the baker's dozen. I said someone that you respect and they respect you. They don't respect you. If they don't refer to you, then they don't think well of you. Or you have done such a good job of hiding your sign and boarding up your windows, they don't even know what sandwiches you have to sell. So you want to be honest about that. My guess is, folks that are good communicators like you all are, they're not the right person and need to find someone else. So what's the timeline for that? Takes you 20 to 60 minutes to make the list of 13 occupations, to fill it in, 2 to 3 per occupation. You're looking at maybe 30 people. A go-getter could be done in 2 to 3 months. But I think a more reasonable pace would be 1 new person a week. You're meeting, let's say 4 to 10 people that you haven't ever met before at a networking event, or you're calling up people saying, I'd like to introduce me to a CPA. Do you know any you think well of? You're making that outreach happen. 1 new person a week would take you about 30 weeks. If you're super fast, you're done by Valentine's Day. If you're going moderately, you're done by July 4th. If you're not trying, it'll be Halloween and you're not done. And you should ask yourself, why am I not trying? Didn't I say growth was something that I cared about? Valentine's Day, you're super awesome. July 4th, good job. Halloween, what's going on? What's the truth of the situation? You should have those people in place in the baker's dozen. When you complete that rainmaker's tactic, the baker's dozen, that is an amazing accomplishment. The view is beautiful from that mountain. You're not done. I said it was 3 steps. List the 13, get the 30 or so people. The third step is stay in touch. You have to arrange the coffees and the lunches. You have to do the interaction that makes a real relationship. You'll know that you have that real relationship because when you meet up with them, wherever you meet up with them, they're going to say something like, oh yeah, this is the person that goes with me to the rodeo. Excellent example. If you aren't keeping the sign lit up with that daily discipline, then your efforts to build the list were wasted. You have to stay in touch with them so there's an actual relationship and an interaction that's meaningful to your practice and to your life, to your human condition. So that was the third story. I really appreciate your time as you listen to me talk through these three stories. I shared with you the location decision, which describes the importance of letting people know that you have a valuable service to offer. And you have to do that on a daily basis. I shared with you a little bit about how the modern concepts here in the West of balance and happiness can sometimes pin you down in the quagmire of the mediocre, the average, the I didn't really give attention to the goals I wanted to accomplish. And then finally, I gave specific guidance on how to grow. The baker's dozen is a rainmaker's tactic that if any of you decide to use it, you will not be sorry. I think we do have time for questions, and I'd like to mention that any question is I'm open to any question on your mind. You know, I lead a service organization. If you want to talk about that, if you want to talk about getting published, if you want to talk about the investing world, if you think I can provide some input on the question in your mind, I'm open to it because I really do want this time to be valuable to you. So with that, who is going to be the first person to ask a question? The first book is Principles by Ray Dalio. And thank you for asking the first question. We have a book for you. It's called The Prepared Investor. And I can sign it for you afterwards if you like that. To you or to whoever, maybe you want to give it to someone else.
You found that your rainmaking is influenced by the downturn in the economy, and how do you go with that when you're making your daily contact?
Sure. So there is always that external environment that affects us. And I like to think of the farmer. You know, the farmer, you've got inside you, you have to get up and you have to go and feed your animals every single day. Otherwise, your ranch is gonna go to pot. Okay. But it's not just that internal fortitude of I have to do this. There's also the external issues of, well, there's a blizzard out and I'm going to have to like shovel through all this to get there. And both of those are real, and you do have to deal with both. The point, though, I think, is that rain or shine, the dedication to getting those animals their feed has to happen. That's the definition of being a farmer. And I think that anytime that we start to turn our attention to what are the external things that are out of our control, first thing that should come to your mind is, it's not going to affect me. My daily discipline remains the same, that animals need to be fed. Certainly the economy is down. Certainly the conversations are going to be a little bit different. The snow out there means that the animals are more cold, or there's something additional that needs to be done. But it doesn't mean that it is okay to put a sign, put a tarp over the sign and board up the windows. So to be a little bit more specific, to answer your question, our job is very much focused on the environment of the economy and what's going in the investment markets. And so the way that we handle that is we have a monthly discipline as a team of staying in touch with our partners and our clients. So what that means is, as things change, they're hearing from us. We can talk about it before it happens, while it's happening, and after it's happened. And to me, I kind of liken that to the farmer that's like, hey, I know that in November the snow is coming, so I'm going to go ahead and just put salt out there and just be ready for it. This philosophy I just described is a philosophy of preparation. And that is what my first book is all about, is that crisis is not a one and done. Crisis happens over and over and over. We can be prepared for it. Did that help? Did that answer the question? Okay, thank you for asking. And we do have a second book here, so I'd love for you to get a hold of that.
Go to my hearing.
Well, can we hand you the book before you leave?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Do you plan your certain time every day
or kind of, I find if you just fit it in, that may not get done, whereas if you say, this time, every day, I'm gonna plan who I'm gonna contact, I'm gonna plan, it's organized, it's kind of rigid. Which way do you find the most success?
Well, when someone says, I will just let spontaneously pay attention to something, I know that means that that is not a priority. The things that we just spontaneously allow to happen into our life, that's things that happen to you, or it's things that you just have a feeling about in the moment. It's not a serious commitment or priority. The things that you schedule and that you don't let the snow or the economy or whatever other outside influences, you don't let those break that schedule. That's a commitment. That's one of the reasons that in our relationships with other people, who's get upset with you when you and your spouse have a evening planned and you cancel on them? Well, yeah, your spouse is going to get upset with you. You're probably going to get a little upset with yourself too. It's saying something about your priorities. And that's why I am a big fan of the first thing you said, which is time blocking, setting aside the time. So it's the same time every day. You've got a good pattern to it. And by the way, this isn't just in service organizations. This is exactly what they do in boot camps for the military. This is exactly what they do in every Olympic training facility. Our bodies, our minds, they work well when there is an understood expectation. Let me say that another way. Our bodies and our minds work well when we know what to expect. We know, hey, tomorrow at 10 to 11, I'm going to be doing this just the same as I did today. That's actually one of the reasons that it's so hard for people to change. That 2% rule, it's not because people are lazy. It's not because people don't care about that catalyst. They did care. They liked the idea. They would like to grow. The reason they didn't change is because we're programmed as animals to gravitate toward the habit, to gravitate toward the expected routine. Breaking routine is really hard. Creating a new routine, it's hard. That's why there's so many books about, how do you change your habits? How do you get into a new routine? Those books exist because that is something that is hard. Thanks for asking the question. I'm out of books, but it's sold on Amazon if you like. Yes, sir.
Second, typical upper middle class, two professional family.
Yes.
They read Jeremy Siegel's Stocks to the Long Run, and they figured out to low fees, that's what works for us. Put it in every month based on the plan, whatever, and not think about it. Okay? And it's worth great for them. When, if ever, should that couple go to you? What would you have to advise them on? And would there be at least some portion of their portfolio that you say, you're doing great, just keep doing it?
Yeah. Okay. So when would they come to us? One time that they would come to us would be when there is a crisis. Their portfolio's dropped and the stress level that they're dealing with in the house would be mitigated by having a third-party professional that they can talk to and they can trust and has a good relationship with them. That'd be a great time for them to come through our doors. Another good time would be when there's a change at the house from growing their assets to now needing to use the assets to live. So, most of the time we say retirement, but retirement's kind of an old phrase now. I mean, there's very few families now that just full on retire. There's usually a phase of doing a little bit to kind of keep your hand in some game that is interesting to you. But once you're using those assets to live off of, it's a very different discipline, and passive is not the way to go. And you really do want to either yourself have that attention you're giving to the portfolio to make sure that you're getting income from those investments, or hire someone to do it for you. So that would be two times that somebody would come through our door. I think you'd had another question though, and I can't remember what it was. Did I answer everything? Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for asking. That's kind of like a commercial for my wealth management team. Thank you.
So the legal industry is pretty hyper specialized. I think more so now than it was. Do you have any recommendations or thoughts on growth?
Sure. Well, so new to an industry, like if you're new to Subway and you have to sell these sandwiches, new to an industry doesn't mean in our world, the service oriented world, it doesn't mean that you don't have the capability to bring in new business. So some ideas for someone who's new to the industry. Idea number one is find somebody that you trust nearby. Like that's one of the nice things about a team like this, where there are people of integrity like Pat, and and he's the only one I know here, but I'm sure that this is a place of, it's not dog eat dog, like I know does exist in Wall Street and in the legal world. Find someone that you can lean on, and that when you're bringing in business, you can describe their resume and you can describe their capabilities. That really does go a long way. Another side to, hey, I'm new to the industry, is capitalize on all the free time that you have. This is the time. Something like the baker's dozen, you should double it. 13 slots with 2 to 3. No, how about 20 slots with 4 to 5? You're in one networking group. Well, why not be in 3? This is the time, because the billable hours are probably not as full in your schedule just yet. Or if they are, it's because it's somebody else's work, and you're going to need to change that so that the firm can see that you're somebody who's valuable beyond just doing somebody else's work. You're bringing in new clients yourself. Another thing I think being new to an industry is the value of reading. You notice I started off my talk with, hey, there's a book I read. It's not just that because I'm an author that I really think that reading is important. I just cannot overstress to you the value of a daily discipline of reading. Just like I can't overstress the value of a daily discipline of growth, that growth activity. There's a lot of research that was made popular by a self-help guru that I can't remember his name, but he's the really tall guy that everybody knows. And he does these, like, you walk across the hot coals. Anyway, this guy's famous, and he really made public a lot of this research that proves 60 minutes of professional reading a day. 1 year later, you know more about that subject than the vast majority of other people. 1 year, 60 minutes a day, your knowledge base on that subject, you are an expert. So, putting in the time to read. And then the last thing I'll mention for someone that's new in the industry is the value of not having that many balls yet to juggle. So, if you're ever going to do a 100-hour work week, which I don't recommend, and I don't want you to think my talk says 100 hours is good, 120 is better. No, we all have our limits, and there's so many balls we have to keep in the air. But typically, if you're new to an industry, that means that you might have less balls in your life than someone who is 20 years your senior. They probably have a bit more going on and a bit more to juggle. And so take advantage of that. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah. Thanks for asking. Yes, ma'am.
I find a lot of attorneys find it difficult to ask. Any suggestions on how you ask for this? Don't take people to lunch or go to events. Never ask. I really would appreciate you sending a matter my way if you need to or whatever. Do you have any recommendations?
I do. So one recommendation that is a bit hard, and then another recommendation that is really easy. So the hard one is give them business. Give them business. Those that give, receive. You give to gain. I mean, Zig Ziglar, he says, you get what you want after you get someone else what they want. That's the first step. But it's not always possible to do that, especially in our world where discretion is so important, where you can't mention people's names easily. It's hard to give referrals. And so then the question becomes, well, if I didn't have a referral to give, how do I go in there and tell them I want them to give me a referral? And the easy answer to that is draw up a quick worksheet that has 3 to 6 questions on it that are referral questions, such as, let's say that you work with business owners. Hey, are any of your neighbors business owners? mean, it's a pretty pointed question, but write it down. Write down those 3 to 6 questions, get them down on writing, and then use that piece of paper in your meeting. And you can even make fun of yourself a little bit in the meeting. You can say, hey, yeah, this is what I'm trying to do something new. Pardon me. I just want to make sure that we're getting the most out of this professional relationship that we can. I've got a couple questions here. The first one is, who at your office is the next one to retire, in your opinion? I mean, you don't have to be right, but when I say next to retire, who do you think of? And what you'll find is practice makes perfect. The more you do it, the better you get at it. The more you do it, the more you'll change your verbiage to be more effective. You have to do it the first time. You have to agree to do it the second time. And, practice makes perfect. If you go online and do a search for referral questions, you'll see there's a ton out there. There's so many that are just immediately available. You don't even have to think this stuff up on your own. The only reason why I suggest you think it up on your own is because probably if you think it up on your own, it's coming from what is natural and normal for you. And so it's a little easier for you to do it when you're, in front of that stranger or in front of that friend. Different personalities react differently. Some of us, we're in front of a stranger and it's so hard to ask for a referral. But to talk to a friend, we're like, oh yeah, I would ask for a referral all day long. And there are others of us that's the opposite. We're in front of a friend. I'm like, I could never ask my friend for a referral. But we're in front of a stranger. Well, that's a stranger. I'll ask them all day. Well, figure out which one you are and then get in front of those people a lot. No problem. You don't have to change. You don't have to be something different. What else?
So who's the perfect client for you that we can refer to?
Thank you for asking. So at my shop, we've got different silos, and each silo has an advisor that leads that team. So for Jordan's world, a perfect referral would be a partner level or higher at a major consulting firm. So this would be Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Accenture, Deloitte. I mean, she's already deep in there, knows a lot of these folks. Because she works with that crowd, those partners, they often, when they leave their firm and they go what it's called into industry, that's what it's called when they move away from the consulting firm, they usually go in at a C-level. And so she has a number of C-level clients as well. So, if you're talking with somebody who, is Fortune 1000 C-level client, that would be a great introduction for her. But usually the easier one is the consultant, especially if they're younger in their career, because they probably don't even have any of those resources yet. And we are not short-minded. We're very long-minded. Remember in my talk, a decade for balance. We're very long-minded. So if that person is 5 years before they would become a partner, we don't care. We would love to honor your referral by giving them the red carpet. Yes. What else? Raise your hand if you didn't ask a question. Just okay.
Do you think we're gonna have a recession?
Oh, we're already in it. Yeah, I think it's a real thing, and I don't think it's going to close up real quick. I think we're going to be dealing with it maybe till this time next year, and then we'll be in 2024 when things start to finally turn around. I mean, my crystal ball is broken. Nobody can predict the future, but that's just me giving my best professional guesstimate.
Do you think that the federal government in their efforts to clamp down on a recession is using an old technique that doesn't work in what is definitely more of a global economy? So this raising of interest rates over and over and over doesn't seem to be working as it had in the past, because our economy isn't so isolated, even as it was 40, 50 years ago. And thus, we're raising interest rates, and maybe that is tightening lending somewhat, but it's not the tamp down that it used to be.
Well, not only do I agree with you, I'll add some additional pieces to the puzzle. So as we're raising rates, the government that is raising rates is the same government that is in debt trillions of dollars. I don't mean 3 trillion, 4 trillion, which that by itself is crazy. 25 to 30 trillion in debt. I don't think anyone in this room, myself included, can really appreciate what that number means. But when they raise the rates, they're making that debt more expensive on themselves. And so this is, I think, a bad pattern. Where does this pattern lead? Well, it's going to lead most likely to a moment in time when the world recognizes that the US just created money to cover an interest payment. And as soon as that happens, our credit rating goes down and it becomes even harder for us to do this impact on the global economy, for us to exist with and interact with other countries, to enforce treaties, beyond the we have big guns and so you have to do what we say. That's something different. But yeah, I think that's the path that we're on. And the only way that I can see that we would change that path would be some real austerity, something that I don't think either political party has the stomach for. Probably, and I don't want to point at the parties because that's a little bit of a misnomer in my book. Really, I'm pointing at us. We as a nation, Americans, probably don't have the stomach to pay more in taxes, accept less in government services so that we can get out of debt. Therefore, we are going to end up at some point where to cover the debt, we're just printing dollars. And when that happens, credit rating goes down. And for those of you that think, oh, that's so terrible, I got to leave America. Oh, no, don't worry. This has happened in lots of other countries. Never has it turned into bloodshed in the streets. I mean, I've got an uncle who he's convinced I've got to have guns and bullets ready to go because when this country, I really would like to, make sure people know that that's a bit silly. Did that answer your question? Okay, thank you, Pastor. Anything else? This is your time. Get what you want out of it. And then I think I should just say thank you to Pat and to Jackie. I really appreciate y'all letting me talk today. Thanks for your time, y'all.